Greetings, creatures of the night, or daytime depending on your sleeping pattern. This is Dead Monkey of Mortified Productions, and welcome to my first top 10 video. Yes, I've decided to include top 10 videos to my video curriculum, which I plan on releasing the occasional top 10 in between video projects like the current Spongebob analysis series that I'm doing. These top 10s are going to be covering various different types of media, such as video games, movies, music, TV, and whatever I feel like doing. And what can I say? I wouldn't want to leave you people waiting for more content. I'd feel fucking horrible for that. So without any further bullshit, cue the intro.
Dead Monkey's Top 10!
Today, we're counting down my top 10 scary video game monsters. The rules are simple. They can't be from the same game, though they can be from the same franchise, they can be from just about any kind of genre, and they can be any kind of enemy, ranging from bosses to the most common enemy in said game. Not exactly the traditional rules you'd find elsewhere, but this is my video and I'm gonna do what the fuck I want! So, without further ado, let us commence the countdown. Number 10. It's late at night and you find yourself walking through an abandoned building when all of a sudden you hear someone crying in a nearby room. As you investigate the whereabouts of said blubbering noises, you come across a woman collapsed to the floor in her bra and panties, weeping like a particularly overgrown infant. And just as you're about to question her wails of woe, she rips out your jugulars and dissects your internal organs before you could say,
grab and peels.
The witches from the F.E.A.R. Dead series are some of the most volatile enemies I've encountered in the virtual world. What's rather bone-chilling about these half-naked hell spawns is how they undermine the player with their very presence. You'll usually spot them sitting idle, crying like an emotionally distressed teenager on prom night who just can't decide if the blue or red dress or bow tie is more suitable to impress their honey pumpkin. It really doesn't take much to startle them, and doing so will usually require a medical kit from your teammates. They will heal you, but that depends on how often you sputter those racist opinions of yours on the microphone, which is rather difficult to avoid considering they often spawn right in the most inconvenient places, blocking you and your teammates from advancing towards your objectives. Because both F.E.A.R. Dead 1 and 2 have such finely toned atmospheres, it's almost impossible to not have erect hair follicles when you're standing just yards away from one of these she-demons. In F.E.A.R. Dead 2, not all of them stay stationary when idle, which believe me when I say this makes them 200 times more terrifying. If there's any advice I could give when facing one of them, know exactly where they are, don't play with bots, and for the love of God, turn off your fucking flashlight.
Reloading!
How many goddamn witches are there?
Damn, bitches must like sugar.
Number 9. I played my first mature-rated game when I was 12 years old, which was the GameCube remake of the original Resident Evil. Within the first 10 minutes of gameplay, I shuffled my way to the corner of the first hallway, encountered the first zombie, shit my pants, got a chunk ripped out of my frontal lobe, died an embarrassing death, yanked the game out of my system, returned it to Blockbuster, came home, poured myself a glass of milk, and played Wind Waker while cuddling with my teddy bear, Mr. Yum Yums. We all know Wind Waker for its unique, downright adorable design and undeniable charm. Needless to say, I wasn't expecting to encounter any zombies in this seemingly family-friendly action-adventure title. But boy was I misled. The re-deads from The Legend of Zelda The Wind Waker were one of the banes of my childhood existence. Considering the GameCube was my first home console and I never really had the chance to experience much of Ocarina of Time, nor do I have the money to get the GameCube port, I've heard a few horror stories about the original incarnations, though the only ones I've had any real confrontations with are the ones in Wind Waker and Twilight Princess. Let me just say, I wish I hadn't. The ones in Wind Waker. The ones in Twilight Princess? No! You encounter these Kardashian wannabes in the caves of Outset Island, the Earth Temple, Ganon's Tower, and a few other areas in the game. It's not so much their less than intimidating physique that gives me the creeps, seeing as they look like older versions of what most of my generation will probably look like in 40 years from now.
Shots have been fired!
But it's their ability to stop you stone cold in your tracks with that god-awful shriek that they emit and crunch on your cranium while overlooking you with those soulless red-dotted eyes. You could try and tumble out of the way, but don't be surprised when they shriek at you twice in a row and end up nomming on that delectable green hat of yours. You could take the safe route and waste 3 to 5 year bombs on it from a distance, or you could attempt to be brave and attack them head on. Either way, these things are fucking creepy, and I would rather go square dancing with Tingle than fight the likes of them. Although, I will admit there is one thing from Twilight Twilight Princess that still makes my skin crawl to this day. And I do consider it a monster. This thing. What the fuck, Nintendo? What the actual fuck? Number 8. What is it about demonic and or psychic children that we seem to be so fascinated by in the world of video games and film? Is it how innocence in its purest form is being manipulated by a malevolent force that seeks to eradicate all that is virtuous? Or are we simply susceptible and blinded by a fear that those who seem virginal in nature are more consciously malicious than we suspect? Is it subconsciously our own lack of innocence that motivates our sympathy for the corrupt and morally immaculate? Or are we essentially bounded by intuition and anxiety to fully fathom the motivations of others? I don't know, I'm not an expert, but I feel like a smarty pants for writing that. Yes, children are scary as it is, but when given psychic powers, then you don't want to accidentally drink their last juice box. And if there's any child's juice box you don't want to drink, it would be the juice box of Alma from F.E.A.R. And F.E.A.R. You play as a mercenary of the F.E.A.R. squad, project dedicated to investigating paranormal activity and all-around spooky stuff. Throughout the game, you encounter many different hallucinations of this mysterious little girl named Alma. She's the result of an experimentation conducted by Project Origin and... frankly, I wasn't the most invested with the story. I found F.E.A.R. to be more gameplay driven than anything, and it's the juxtaposition of shooter and horror elements that really took the cake with this one. Besides Norton Mapes. The slippery fat bastard. Throughout the game, she isn't very harmful, but most of the time, you're unsure how hostile she really is, and whether she intends to harm you or haunt you. There's no way to avoid her, and all you can do is just wait for her to give you a spook or two. She may not seem like much of a threat, but it's always a good idea to stay the hell away from her just in case. Seriously though, don't drink her juice box. Number 7.
Have you ever wanted to get away from all the hypocrisy and injustice of our modern society? Does your life seem to be heading in no direction whatsoever? Are you bored and are yearning for adventure and more prosperous endeavors? Then by the sweat of your brow, feel free to come with me to a place that is... No, you rapscallion! No!
Sorry about that. What better place to embark on a treacherous underwater adventure than that of Rapture City from BioShock? I can go on for hours with how much I adore this game in almost every aspect that it beholds, but today I'm talking about video game monsters. And what video game monster list would be completed without the Big Daddy? The Big Daddies were designed to protect the little sisters of Rapture City from the Splicers and anyone else who even dares to approach them. The little sisters are the highly sought out entities who are possessed by parasites that contain an element known as Adam, which is vital to collect for upgrading various powers that are necessary to advance in the game. During the Big Daddy's formal introduction, it's made clear that you don't want to fuck with them. All in all, these underwater scuba rejects are nothing but gentle giants. They won't impose a threat to you unless you provoke them first, but what's terrifying about them is just how protective they can be. You know they're around the corner when you hear them trudging about and trying to sing Flying Whales by Gojira, and one bullet in the wrong direction will usually result in being rearranged into an assortment of fancy tuna. If that's even physically possible. Your best bet to eliminate these metallic monstrosities would be to use your environment, ammunition, and power-ups to your advantage and know exactly when to approach them. And if you get into BioShock 2, watch out for their fucking sisters. Number 6. Have I ever mentioned how much I dislike display mannequins or any human porcelain-like things? I haven't? Well, let me set the record straight that I hate Display mannequins! That's all I'm really trying to say here. I mean, seriously, I know they're inanimate objects and everything, but you can just tell they're plotting the annihilation of the human race with their white, plastic, or porcelain expressionless faces and their suspicious poses. You can only imagine how I must have felt the first time I saw the mannequins from Doctor Who. I'm just kidding, that was the stupidest fucking thing I've ever seen. Now, if you want something to potentially scar you for life if you share similar levels of distaste for mannequins as I do, then play Condemned Criminal Origins. You'll think twice before setting forth in an Old Navy ever again. As if anyone even gives a shit about that store. I kinda wanna meet the person over in Monolith Productions who came up with this idea for an enemy in a video game, but I'm not sure whether I'd wanna praise them for this or slap them upside the head with a herring sandwich. You encounter the mannequins in an abandoned department store in the mall section of the game. Around the beginning of the level, you'll see many identical display mannequins standing around various departments. Some of them are actual display mannequins, and others are deranged hobos covered in rubber. One thing that really impressed me about Criminal Origins was the sound design. From a distance, you can actually hear these creeps rustling around with the sound of their rubber rubbing up against their armpits and leg joints. It's absolutely nerve-wracking with headphones. Hell, these things walk around like the witch's guards from The Wizard of Oz. Your best strategy of killing them is learning their attack patterns and always anticipate them around corners. They're essentially like the other enemies in the game, but with different, more stealth-like attacking strategies. Also, the last part of the level is pretty much the reason I never go to the mall anymore. Amazon is all that I need. And Netflix. And maybe someone to cuddle with. I'm getting tired of Mr. Yum Yums. Number 5. One definition of a monster would be any animal or human grotesquely deviating from the normal shape, behavior, or character, which means any monster on this list could easily be human. Or in number 5's case, a man-child wearing a pig's head who wields a chainsaw. Pigsy, I'm talking about Pigsy from Manhunt. If there's any psychological stealth horror game that'll keep you constantly on your toes, it would have to be the original Manhunt, one of the most controversial games in gaming history and one of my personal favorites. As a convict who's been spared from the injection seat by a snuff film director named Lionel Starkweather, your main objective is to silently take down gang members and fellow murderers throughout Carcer City in the most gruesome ways possible for the sake of survival. And I guess Starkweather's sexual amusement.
Getting me all flustered here.
And in the final level, you're pitted up against Starkweather's main attraction, a mentally unstable psychopath who, as mentioned earlier, is wearing the head of a skinned pig, is wielding a chainsaw, and also has his dick hanging out. What's more fucking horrifying than that? Well, besides the last remaining monsters on this list. But don't think for a second that this Piggly Wiggly is as cuddly as Waddles from Gravity Falls. You might as well just stay hidden in the shadows and hope to God he doesn't smell the blood stains in your shirt and the piss stains in your trousers. This is honestly one of the most intense ending boss battles I've encountered, because for one, he's hogshit crazy, and he's much more tricky to lure in for an ambush considering your environment. Especially on hardcore mode when you have no radar and no fucking clue where he is until you hear him squealing down the hallway with his chainsaw, coming to claim your bacon. Okay, I'm done with the pig puns already. Your only bet for surviving against this twisted porker, okay, that was my last one, is to stick in the shadows, keep your wits about you, and perform the 3 executions needed to take him down. Oh, and then lure him out on the platform and sever his hands with a chainsaw where he plummets to his inevitable death. That's not too hard, is it? Number 4. Resident Evil 4 is quite possibly my favorite video game of all time. Just thought I'd throw that out there. Love it or hate it, there's no denying that this game imposed a major impact on the entire gaming industry as a whole. From its superb third-person gameplay mechanics, to its vast, beautiful world to explore, to its compelling dialogue.
I've sent my right hand to dispose of you.
Your right hand comes off?
Great job.
Resident Evil 4 has always been one of those games where I could easily play through 1,000,000 times and would never get bored of it. I will say this though, one of RE4's biggest flaws was that most of the game didn't scare me as much as its predecessors. Yes, there are a lot of really intense, holy shit, what should I do kind of moments, and it did maintain some survival horror aspects throughout the game, but there are very few elements that psychologically left me quivering in my shorts. Although there is one thing that absolutely petrifies me to this day, and it isn't Leon's luscious locks. A long time ago on one of my older Dead Monkey channels, I made a rather quick top 10 scary video game monster list, and I put this bastard at number 1. The first time I encountered this freak of all that is decent in nature, I literally had to stop playing this game for about 2 or 3 months. I was only about 14 at the time, and I swear I've never stopped playing a game because of an enemy before, besides the Resident Evil remake, of course. You can scrutinize me all you want, but I have no shits to give. I mean, just look at the way it walks, and do I even have to mention the breathing? It still sends serious chills up my spine. Oh, and did I forget to mention they can regenerate their limbs, including their fucking heads when blown off? Clearly, they aren't very friendly. Oh, and watch out for their spiky cousins, the Iron Maidens. They're even worse. They're like Pinhead's long-lost uncles or some shit. Now, the game says the proper way to kill these fuckers is to obtain the infrared scope in the freezer room when collecting the garbage key, and shoot the 5 parasites that are latched onto their bodies. Well, over the years, I've learned a foolproof method of killing these seemingly invincible beings with only one well-placed shotgun shell and your knife. Ludicrous, you say? Well, grab a carbonated drink of your choice and check this out. Number 3. If you know me fairly well, you'll know that the Silent Hill series is one of my obsessions. Silent Hill 2 and 3, I think a lot of us can agree, are some of the best entries not only in the franchise, but the entire survival horror genre itself. Silent Hill 2 holds one of the finest told stories in video game history, and it set up the true staple atmosphere that the series is akin to, featuring a brilliant soundtrack, amazing monster design, and incredibly well-developed characters.
This town is full of monsters. How can you sit there and eat pizza?
Well, Silent Hill 3 manages to perfect the atmosphere, gameplay, sound design, and overall horror aspects, making it, in my opinion, the scariest entry in the series. Although, which monster from which game made it to number 3 on this list? Well, I chose one of the freakiest, most well-known monsters of the entire series. And that monster is... the Slurper. What, were you expecting Pyramid Head? Before I talk about my choice, I need to go off on a little rant/tangent here about something. The reason I didn't select the red pyramid thing was because I simply don't find him that scary anymore. Now, before you start throwing your lead pipes and 2x4s at me, please hear me out. The thing is, while Pyramid Head is one of my all-time favorite monsters in gaming, I just don't find him that scary like I once have before. I'm still very intrigued by his role in Silent Hill 2. I love the concept, I love the symbolism behind his existence. Hell, I even have a poster in my room with him. I guess I just don't find him scary anymore because of how often we see him in the post-Team Silent games. I mean, ever since Origins, we've seen Pyramid Head clone after Pyramid Head clone. I've heard all the theories about PH from the movie and in Homecoming, and it still doesn't convince me otherwise. Even if they both have different roles and motivations, they're still essentially taken from Silent Hill 2, but with different designs. And don't tell me that the boogeyman from Downpour is not a Pyramid Head clone. You don't need the helmet and the horniness to still be a representation of a desire for punishment. And I swear, if Silent Hills has some sort of monster wielding a big, heavy object that son of a bitch! Pyramid Head has become an archetype for modern-day Silent Hill games, simply because he's regarded as the most memorable from the series, alongside the nurses. He was such a fresh, original idea that was part of such a unique concept, but ultimately became as disposable as the fucking minions from Despicable Me, but not nearly as marketable, of course, and I'm being somewhat over-exaggerating. Anyways, you get my point, and I'm already way off track as it is. Continuing from where I left off, Silent Hill 3 utilized the horror aspects to its full potential. The enemies in this game are definitely some of the most demented monstrosities I've seen in the horror genre. But if there's any monster from SH3 that makes me clench my anus the tightest, it would have to be the Slurpers. I swear no sexual innuendo was intended with that. I think it's safe to say that anything that scuttles across the floor can be potentially frightening on its own, but when it's making slurping noises at you and looks like a bloody half-naked 5-year-old on ecstasy attempting to imitate an anteater, that's when shit gets fucking scary. Yes, I'm constantly cringing while walking down narrow hallways full of numb bodies, and I'd rather go listen to 9 Inch Nails with the closers and get skewered and penetrated by the pendulums, but there's something that makes my skin seize up like the blinds on a cartoon windowsill when these scuttling weirdos come a-slurping my way. Again, no sexual innuendos intended. I wanna fuck you like an animal. I wanna feel it from... Hey! Hands off the merchandise, dickhead. Number 2. With the exit of traditional survival horror games midway through the 2000s, developers decided to experiment and capitalize on more action-oriented games, with the quote-unquote horror term slapped on, with the developers thinking they're improving certain mechanics and aspects to quote-unquote enhance the experiences we're accustomed to. For the longest time, it seemed as if the AAA industry completely ditched the concepts of survival horror in place of neck veins, over-the-top explosions, and quick-time events. Goddamn motherfucking quick time events in particular. Basically, no one seemed interested in selling a good old-fashioned scare anymore. Before the turn of the decade, when the fans themselves decided to rise up and begin creating brand new, innovative ideas to try and revive traditional survival horror with some new twists of their own. One game in particular that helped inspire and reintroduce the survival horror genre would be Amnesia: The Dark Descent. With a crackerjack story, a stunning soundtrack, superb sound design, emphasis on exploration, and interesting puzzles, this game is a veteran survival horror fan's bread and butter. But what would be a good horror game without a plausible threat? That's where the Gatherers and the Sutures come in, which I'm tying both monster varieties for number 2. And let me tell you something, these monsters are absolutely ruthless. Hell, you can't even directly look at them without depleting your sanity meter. There's a sanity meter. The Gatherers were once the servants of Alexander of Brennenburg, and the Sutures, from the free Amnesia DLC title Justine, are Justine's ex-lovers. There are 2 kinds of Gatherers, grunts and brutes, and there are technically 3 different Sutures, but they're all pretty much the same design and attack-wise. Grunts are the most common enemy in the game, and are the least damaging, while the brutes, on the other hand, will instantly kill you with one hit. As I mentioned before, the sound design in this game is astounding. Once you hear one of these things make their slurpy, groaning grandpa reading his newspaper-esque noises, you know you're potentially screwed. The Sutures, on the other hand, make my palms sweat a little more. If the wheezing doesn't make you evacuate your bowels in a matter of seconds, you must have a rectum of steel. Sorry, I'll be back in a second. What made me decide to put these things so high up on the list has a lot to do with the gameplay mechanics. You're technically playing a life-in virtual death game of hide-and-seek when they spawn, and they don't even count to 10. Most of the time, you have to frantically open and close the door and hope to sweet marmalade that they don't start busting it down. With both sets of monsters, you have no real way to defend yourself, so your only chances of survival is to run and find a safe place to hide, or a book you can put in front of your face. Well, at least with the grunts. Let's hope this glitch never gets fixed. But yeah, these guys are scary. Number 1. If you haven't noticed, I've mentioned the Resident Evil remake a few times throughout this video. It absolutely terrified me as a kid, and it became my all-time favorite survival horror game as time has gone by. After playing through the original and comparing it to its remake, it's absolutely remarkable how well Capcom recreated the Spencer Mansion. Everything besides the essential layout of the mansion has been rebuilt from the ground up, with an all-new atmosphere, various areas that have been added for more exploration opportunities, new dialogue that is slightly less cheesy,
A second late. You would have fit nicely into a sandwich.
and more zombies, dogs, and crows that you can flail a survival knife at. I think it's more than blatantly obvious which game I chose for my number 1 pick for this list, so without further ado, here's my number 1 pick for this list. Lisa fucking Trevor. Did I stutter? Lisa fucking Trevor. Holy shit, where should I begin? Have you ever gotten a nightmare because of a video game? I have, thanks to Lisa fucking Trevor. I put as much emphasis on fucking as I possibly can, because this fucking thing gave me nightmares. And that's something I can't say about the other monsters on this list. There's something about Lisa Trevor that's always given me a serious case of the nopes, even from the first time I heard her by the graveyard. Screw this, I'm getting out of here. It gets much worse when you're formally introduced to her. As you ascend to the cabin, you investigate it to discover nobody's there. But just as you're about to walk out, you get a conk on your head and go nap for a couple of minutes. And as you awaken without any damage indicated from your health meter, you're instantly greeted by her. She was essentially a pincushion for Umbrella's experimentations when she was at a very young age. She was separated from her mother, who was also experimented on, but ultimately got snuffed out because she didn't react positively to the antidotes. Lisa, on the other hand, became immune to the viruses and became stronger and more dehumanized as time went by. She became hellbent on seeing her mother again, so much that a few employees tried to imitate both of her parents and she ripped their faces off and attached it to her body. Well, at least they were humans. Right, Peter? She got loose at one point and became a hermit in the shack outside of the graveyard, surviving on the fauna of the nearby forest, and developed an impulsive obsession with candles, which I too share a similar obsession. Apple cinnamon scented to be exact. She stalks you throughout certain portions of the game, and no matter how many bullets you waste, she just won't die. She's like Jehovah's Witness on steroids. Though Lisa wasn't originally included in the PS1 title, her inclusion in the remake gave more living testimonial of just how far the Umbrella Corporation took their research in biological warfare, and her storyline will leave you with a sense of emotional satisfaction when the time comes. Okay, the bitch killed Barry. Fuck the emotional satisfaction. Well, there you have it, folks. If you have your own top 10 scary video game monster list, feel free to comment below, and feel free to like, share, and subscribe for more content by yours truly. Thanks for watching, and have a good one.